take a shot. I got this Nest cross country we're going to work on today. The owner says that it's got a weird clicking noise as he's running down the road. And so, of course, he starts freaking out. Oh my gosh, it's the transmission, it's this, it's that, my baby, my baby. And you gotta calm him down and approach it logically. So I took the bike off the trailer and I put it on the dyno and started running it. And sure enough, there's a little click. You know, every once in a while I hear this tink, tink, tink. I'm like, ugh. Yeah, I hear it. That's a bummer. And so usually something like that, well, it's usually in the drive line rather than the transmission. So after the dyno, I got out my pry bar here and I went and just started checking out the drivetrain here, the belt and pulleys and the rear wheel and everything. Actually, I just got it off the center stand where I was checking the bearings, but basically what I do is find a spot to pry off of that's not going to mar or anything, and just just give this a couple tugs. It's usually the drive side, the belt side that's got a bad pulley, or excuse me, bearing, but this one was good. And this one was good. Found a nice spot where I'm not going to mess anything up. If that bearing was bad, you'd definitely have a lot of slop in there, and it'd be all, it would feel weird going down the road. So on this one, I thought, well, maybe it's the output, the drive sprocket for the belt. And I'll tell you that I had a bike a couple weeks ago that came in with a noise from that I thought was a drive sprocket, and I took the whole thing apart. It wasn't. It turned out to be the clutch. So sometimes you just got to take it apart. But let me grab my flashlight here. But this bike has telltale signs of the pulley maybe starting to strip out, and that is, it's hard to tell in the video, but the rust. There's, if you get a lot of rust discoloration back here, especially if it's on the block or on the pulley there, that's a good, I don't know why, but that's a good indication, there you can see it, that we might be looking at putting a new drive sprocket on there. So, let's dig into this. Another point that I like to make is a lot of guys will, at this point, start buying parts. Like, oh my gosh, that noise, it's the clutch. And I'm going to buy myself a clutch. And it's like, well, dude, you haven't even taken the bike apart yet. And so how do you know it's the clutch? Hold on, let me put this back on the stand here. And what happens is you buy this clutch, you wait a week for it to show up, and you take it all apart, and it's not the clutch. It doesn't need a clutch. You wasted all that time and money. So the point I'm trying to make is take it apart first. It doesn't cost anything to take it apart and verify what you think is the problem before you order parts. Don't order parts if you don't know what the problem is. You're just guessing. That happens all the time. We get a lot of messages. Hey, I thought it was this. I ordered these parts. I put them on. It's not that, turns out, you know. So let's just start tearing into it. So because of the rust and the nature of the noise, I'm going to start by checking out that drive sprocket, which is going to require complete exhaust removal on this bike and to get at it. So let me start diving in and see what we can come up with. Okay, that was easy, right? Just took a second. So let's pull that pulley off of there. Where's my big ass socket? There it is. Something I noticed when I was taking it apart is that the belt was tracked way to the inside, and you can see it's wear marks where there's no rust or dirt or anything. And I noticed someone's got like soap or something. Probably the belt was squeaking because the pulley's not right, and they put soap on there. Don't put anything on your belt. If anything, it needs cleaned. That goes back to another video I've done years ago about belt noises. And putting this crap on there only attracts dust and dirt will make it have noise. Then again, you get 60,000 miles on the bike and the pulley starts to, wear out and starts to wobble, then it can, that's a different story altogether. And so let's get this sucker off here. Hold on a second. I'm going to leave the belt tight. I haven't done anything to the axle yet. I'm going to zip off this lock nut, or this locking plate here. Sometimes when you take it all apart, the locking plate will actually be broken because it's just that far gone. Luckily, our customer is smart enough to call a mechanic when it starts making noise and catch it before it gets really nasty. But I could see, oh shit. Okay, well, I guess we're not going to need the impact to take that off. This should be 180 foot-pounds. 180 foot-pounds. That means I'll have a big-ass bar, putting torque on it. And the fact that it comes off by hand is obviously we are on the right track here. This is certainly the problem. But if you were at home and this was tight, you would want a 1 7/8 socket, big sucker. So now, usually what happens when you remove that is you get the biggest impact in your box, and you have to heat it up just slightly to kind of get the Loctite melting and just jam it off there with the huge impact. It's a job. But so you can see why I'm so alarmed that it comes off by hand. But if it was tight, I would leave the belt tight and use it to kind of hold the bike while I work the impact and work the bolt or the nut off there. But now that I got it off, I'm going to loosen the tension on the belt. I'm going to loosen the belt up a smidge so that I can get that pulley off there. So loosen the nut, maybe a full turn or half a turn, 3/4 of a turn, something like that. And then I count, here, let me do it on this side. Let me make sure you can see me. So that the belt goes back in the same spot and I don't have to readjust it, I assume that it's good right off the bat. And then I count how far I've loosened it. So in this case, really all I'm going to need is like 1 revolution. So I did 2 halves there. And I moved the nut 1 revolution back. That way when we go back together, I can just do 1 revolution tight and it's done. Easy as that. Actually, let's get this out of here. I use a 24 millimeter for the big nut that's inside here, and I have to use a chrome because an impact socket of such a big, thick sidewall that I can't get it in the passenger foot peg support, so we use a chrome one. Against the Snap-on guy's recommendation. Yeah, boy, she's got some wobble in her. Yeah, holy cow. That is knife-edged. I'll zoom in here in a second. Oops. But my biggest concern is the shaft itself. And I haven't done this in advance, so I don't know what we're going to find. We are discovering it together. And although there's some wear I think we're going to be able to save it. If this repair had been not caught in time and that person had continued to ride the bike, it eventually would strip out the pulley and ruin the shaft. And once the shaft is ruined, you got to pull the engine out, split the cases, put a new shaft in. It's going to be a $4,000 to $5,000 job. So you can see how smart our customer was to go, huh, there's a weird noise. I love this bike. I don't want to have a huge repair bill. I'm going to bring it to a mechanic or work on it myself if you're so inclined before it gets all nasty and breaks down. And he just saved himself $4,000 by doing that. And so be proactive. Let me zoom in on this here. So, well, that light's going to be just too much. There should be a flat spot on these. Oh, I don't have a good pointer. But the edge here, see how it's pointed? That should have actually a flat spot on it. It should come up, be a flat spot, come down. And so it's knife edge like that now. And same with this, where, actually, let me do something real quick. Let me grab a tool. I'm going to put a new seal in this as well. I can see it's starting to get all gunked up. And we're going to take this spacer out. Excuse me. And it gives us a good look at that shaft and the damaged section versus virgin section. And, oh shoot, let me get my pointer. I mean, I know you can see it, but... Alright. Alright, well, you can see what I was talking about earlier when I said that there's a flat spot and the groove, and a flat spot and a groove, and you can see that this has been really eaten into. Here, come on, baby. There you go. So, this, you know, if it was back in the day and at a dealership and this was under warranty, I'd probably put a shaft in it. But those days are long gone, and I've done this repair a few times with a shaft that looked like that, and really what we're going to do is fill that gap with some green Loctite and hope for the best. Put a new pulley on there and keep on rocking. Luckily, it's not as bad as I've seen. I've seen it where they're all stripped out, and this I think we can save. It's not pretty, it's not perfect, but that's sometimes the way it's got to be. Sorry about the focus there. Let me go dig around in my used parts and see what I come up with, and we'll get rocking on reassembly. Actually, before we begin, I want to show you how I take this pulley off, or excuse me, the seal out of there. I do have a new output shaft seal. Keep this in stock for just such an occasion. A new Victory part that comes right from the warehouse in Wisconsin, victorymotorcycles.com. victorymotorcycles.com. So what we got here is a hook tool. Let me see if it'll focus in. Little snap-on hook tool that we can grasp onto the back of these and pop them out. Just like that. And I wanted that out of there, one, because it's all leaky, it's got grime coming out of it, and two, it's going to make it easier to clean this shaft off, because I want the shaft to be as clean as possible before I put it back together. And gives a good chance to look at that output bearing, which looks fine. So let me start in on cleaning that and getting the rest of the parts assembled, and we'll keep on rocking. Okay, let's get busy with this. So I've taken a bunch of carb clean and cleaned off the splines, but I'm very, very careful in how I do it. I've got a little old toothbrush and I stuff a rag kind of back here to protect this bearing and lightly douse it and scrub it all. And then I've got like a little screwdriver. Here, I'll show you. Got this little screwdriver and get it between each groove and clean all the grime out of each individual groove. It actually is quite time consuming. Just like anything, it's all about preparation, and we want this repair to stick. We want the Loctite to fill that little tiny gap that's worn into the splines there. And so the Loctite will work a heck of a lot better if it's clean and dry and no oil or cleaner on there. And then I've done the same to the threads on the outside. Made sure they're super clean. I kind of went through it with the pick and got all the old Loctite and rust and grime out of there. And then I went and I've got a new nut. I highly recommend a new nut because you're ordering a new seal anyway. Again, victorymotorcycles.com was where you get the OEM parts like this new nut, the new seal. It's all going to be Victory parts from the Victory warehouse. So first thing is, let's put the seal in. And technically we could do it old school where you tap it all in with the hammer, but I like to peruse eBay for dealers shutting down and pick up their specialty tools like this one, which I have never actually used before, so I'm excited. This tool showed up a couple months ago and I just haven't had the chance to use it yet. Wow, that is awesome. Love it. But if you're at home and you're doing it yourself, then you gotta do the old, just be so careful. I mean, growing up at a farm and working on tractors and stuff, you kind of get the feel for how to put a seal in, with just a hammer. But be very, very careful. It goes in straight and flush and you don't mess up the seal lip, etc., etc. So there's that. And then I've taken the spacer here, cleaned it all up, got the rust and everything off of there, and put a little lube on it. Make sure it seats nice, it's not binding up the seal lip. And then, what did I do with my new pulley? I had it around here somewhere. There we go. So a used pulley, which is okay by the customer. We talked about it. This came off a low mileage bike that was getting an underdrive pulley. So I've also cleaned the inner splines on that thoroughly. And then what we're going to do is use green Loctite, which they call bearing mount Loctite. And this is like permanent Loctite. It just, it's really nasty stuff. And what you don't want to do is just go slathering it on. Oh yeah, the more the merrier. Because what will happen is it'll creep back into that bearing that we saw behind the seal. It'll wick up the splines here. And the last thing you want is a Loctite in your output shaft bearing. So we're going to be very, very conservative with our application here. Like, holy cow, it's coming out quick. And I've already got too much on it. I'm going to catch it before it wicks all the way up. There we go, there's more reasonable speed. And I'm putting it on just the outer part of the shaft, so when I slide the pulley on, it drags the fluid with it rather than putting the fluid on the back and then it pushing it into the bearing. And then some of these grooves got a little too much in my opinion, and I want to mop up any excess. Oof. So if the shaft was in A+ shape, we wouldn't do this. I would not Loctite the splines if the shaft was in good shape. Completely unnecessary. But because of the situation that we're in, that's how we're doing it. So again, I'm just mopping up extra. This comes out of that bottle really quickly, and I don't want it to get back into the bearing. I want it to, you know, it's like a dab will do ya, if you remember back to your kindergarten teacher talking about Elmer's glue. Okay, I like that. Got a little bit of fluid. It's about the first third of the splines there. Oops. And then we'll put this on. And then the new nut does come with its own Loctite, and that is very effective Loctite. And so I don't go, now I've got red here, I got a bottle of red Loctite, and I'm not going to go slathering it on again. I'm just going to put a little bit at the back of the threads, because some of this thread locker will come off as we tighten it down, and having a little at the back just helps me sleep at night, I guess. So just run a little line of it and let it kind of circle around. And then sorry, I forgot to mention that I pulled the timing cover off there. I got the 6 bolts out, and then I took the timing wheel off, which is a common thing, you know, to replace a timing wheel with a performance one. But reason I did that is so that I can put a number 3 screwdriver in here and lock the engine, so I can, and I'll put it in first gear and we'll lock everything so that I can tighten this nut down. So, let's see. So then I'm going to stick my nut on there. Put it in gear. There it is. And we'll start this with a wrench, or we will start this with a socket and ratchet. Okay, you can see that little bit of Loctite fell off. Now we'll go for the torque wrench, which I've got set to 180 foot-pounds. And I know that I'm in gear, and it's likely going to start turning the engine over here in a second. And then I'm going to shove the screwdriver in. Let's see, this is going to go around so the keyway's pointed up, and I'm going to want to put it in that hole. Get the top dead center here. Here it comes. Ah, there it is. Okay. I know from just all the cam jobs that I do that when this Woodruff key is lined up, that there'll also be a hole that opens up in the crankshaft to stick this timing pin in there. Now I'll give it the full 180 foot-pounds it is. And then we'll double check it. And one more for good measure. Okay, we're good. So, I think that pretty well explains it. I'm going to get the old lock plate, put that back on there. I think it's in all right shape. And just basically put it all back together in reverse order of removal. Just remember, you know, you loosen the belt, but we're going to go 1 revolution tight, so we don't have to readjust that. The gasket was good on this, so I don't need to put a gasket on there. That's something that may have arisen in your repair, is that the need for that gasket, that it rips. Otherwise, I do recommend that this sits overnight. so that the Loctite can cure, and don't go out and assemble this and just immediately start riding it. Let that sit for 24 hours, let it harden up, and yeah, away we go. Problem solved. Appreciate you watching. Good luck with yours.